went back to the studio, it became clear that a follow-up album to Viva Hate was nowhere near completion.
It did seem a bit strange that we recorded the tracks, the Stephen Street tracks, with Morrissey. But there was some type of legal problem, which it's not my place to go into. I don't know the ins and outs anyway. That the recordings couldn't be released that Stephen had written, and also at the time of recording, Morrissey seemed to want to scrap. At first it was one song he'd want to scrap, and then I think we did about 12 or 13 songs, and he ended up scrapping half of them.
I certainly felt that, for me, the songwriting was getting better and better, and I thought, yeah, we're going places. There's no reason why we can't do another complete album, you know. But it wasn't to be.
We did the Wolverhampton gig, and things sort of fizzled out that way between Morrissey and Stephen, because at the time Morrissey started asking me, Mike and Andy for song ideas. And I'd sent Morrissey a few ideas, and I think, you know, the rift was getting a bit wider between him and Stephen at this time, so it looked like Stephen wasn't going to keep writing with Morrissey. Morrissey seemed to want to start writing with me. He liked some of the songs I'd written. I'd sent him, met up at his flat in Manchester a couple of times. We went over things, you know, how things were going to go in the studio. One of the songs I'd written, he said he wanted to be the next single. So it was looking really promising for me, because that's what I wanted to do. I did want to write with Morrissey, and you know, I thought some of the songs were, you know, could have been really, really good, you know. And then the next thing, we'd sort of spoken quite a bit over the phone. And I've heard that Morrissey doesn't speak on the phone, but I remember conversations on the phone about what we were going to do in the studio, as well as meeting up. The next thing was I got a letter through the door saying, you know, I'm looking forward to doing bits of writing with you, you know, and it's looking promising. Things should go well. But at the time I had a case against the Smiths, which was against Morrissey and Ma, really, for unpaid wages. And Morrissey said, if you want to carry on writing with me and, you know, working, recording, playing and everything, then you're going to have to drop your case. So it was an either-or ultimatum, really. And there's just, I couldn't have done that. If I'd have done that anyway, I would have had lawyers to pay, and it's just, I couldn't do it. It was just out of my hands anyway. So I had to stop playing with Morrissey that way, and that was the last I'd heard at all from Morrissey.
Despite the successful release of 2 more singles penned and produced by Stephen Street, it was clear that the relationship was at an end. In April 1989, Morrissey began work on another Street track, Ouija Board, with producers Clive Langer and Alan Winstanley.
I think it was a record company thing, because Stephen Street, he hadn't really fallen out with Morrissey, but I think Morrissey wanted a change or something, and the record company suggested us. We spent a day recording what became Ouija Board, but it wasn't going very well, and so I left the band with Alan Winstanley and went for a walk with Morrissey and just talk about it, said it was fine, you know, it's not really working out, doesn't really matter, it's not a big problem. I think we had a pint of Guinness or something, and came back, and the band were recording the B-side, and it sounded great, and Morrissey and myself sort of looked at each other and said, well, let's see what happens. And that was the start of a beautiful relationship. The first project we did was a single with the B-side, and then we went in again, and then he needed some songs, and we were all writing bits and pieces, and he heard some tunes that I'd done, and he quite liked them. I didn't know that the tune I'd written was going to be November Spawned a Monster because the way he works is you give him the music, he then decide, in my mind, I decided what the chorus was going to be, what the intro was, or whatever. He'll probably sing over the intro, leave the verse, you know, and the chorus will be a re-intro, and the re-intro will be a chorus, and so he makes up his own musical plan over the top of what you've given him. But with November, it was good. It was very interesting because once he did his initial vocal, because of the subject matter, I suggested that we could have a musical interlude or middle section in the middle that could be quite theatrical in a way and be the birth of the monster. And so we added a piece of music after he'd done the vocal, which was quite unusual with him. And we had Mary Margaret O'Hara come down and join in with the audio fireworks.
November spawned a monster, despite its bleak lyrics, continued Morrissey's success in the UK singles chart, his 6th successive top 20 hit in 2 years.
I was proud of that track because it was a risky track in lots of ways. It was long. I mean, the subject matter was quite, you know, heavy. The sound of Mary Margaret O'Hara in the middle of it, screaming as though she's giving birth, it wasn't exactly a normal boy band pop record of the time. So I was very proud of it, and I still am.
The album that eventually appeared in October 1990 was Bona Drag. Not the collection of new material that many had expected. It was instead a compilation of post-Viva Hate singles and B-sides.
We didn't have a whole album that was finished or up to scratch. I don't think we had the songs at that point, but we had some great songs. And so Bona Drag was put together, and I thought it was a really good compilation. It was a really entertaining album. So it was quite a clever idea, I think, in the end. And I didn't feel any problems sharing an album with Stephen Street's songs.
While working with Langer and Winstanley, Morrissey had requested that Mark Nevin, previously the songwriter and guitarist in Fairground Attraction, begin work on new material for a true follow-up to Viva Hate.
I was working in the studio with Kirsty MacColl at the Townhouse Studios in Shepherd's Bush, and I got a call from my publisher who said that Figner O'Kelly, who at that time was managing Morrissey, wanted to speak to me, and he thought it was possibly to do with me working with Morrissey, which it was, and I was very excited about it because I was a big fan of the Smiths and Morrissey, and the next thing I heard was I got a phone call from Andy Parisi, who was the drummer on a lot of the, I think all of the solo Morrissey stuff at that stage, and said, "Can you send Morrissey some music?" This was about, I think, just at the beginning of 1990. And I said, "Well, what sort of music?" I mean, we say, sounds like it's a very vague, you know, outline. So just send him some music on a tape. And I didn't quite know what to send him, you know, because, you know, it was just so vague. There was no sort of, let's have a chat about which way do we make it, rockier, folkier. Well, there was nothing like that. It was just some music. So basically I sent him some music as I thought would be the right kind of thing on a cassette. And a few weeks later I got a postcard from Morrissey on the back of which had one word, which was just perfect, which was a rather naff joke, really, obviously, because I wrote perfect, and that was his very funny joke. And we didn't speak at all. He just kept, I'd send him tapes,